Obviously, you guys know I'm a really big fan of using intermittent fasting, or at least utilizing some amount of gut rest. And you probably already know about all of the cellular cleanup and weight loss benefits of intermittent fasting, but you may have also noticed that you feel a lot less bloated when you have a fasting period. And there's a very specific pathway that intermittent fasting stimulates that causes you to de-bloat that you probably haven't heard of. And today I'm diving into the Migrating Motor Complex, which is that pathway that helps you to de-bloat and helps to improve your gut health, and how you can use intermittent fasting in order to stimulate it and de-bloat in today's video. Okay, now first of all, what is it? The Migrating Motor Complex, aka the MMC, is a series of contractions and secretions within your GI tract that is only stimulated by not eating. Now, the MMC stimulates a series of contractions that starts at the bottom part of your stomach and includes your small intestine to be able to physically push out left behind food, bacteria, and dead cells from your GI tract. It also stimulates secretions from your pancreas and your gallbladder to also help to physically push out that left behind food and bacteria in your GI tract. Now, a quick side note that's very important to consider is that the small intestine is where we actually absorb nutrients. This is where we don't want to have a high amount of bacteria, because if that bacteria is in your small intestine, it could physically steal some of those nutrients from you. And this could lead to issues like nutrient deficiencies. In fact, this is speculated why a lot of people who have SIBO or small intestine bacterial overgrowth tend to have mineral deficiencies and get muscle cramps as a result. That's why the MMC pathway is so important, because it physically flushes out that left behind bacteria and pushes it into our colon, which is the site where we would consider the good, healthy gut bacteria. So when we do refer to healthy gut bacteria, we're referring to the colon, not the small intestine. Any amount of overgrowth within the small intestine can lead to serious GI issues. Now, more specifically, the MMC is stimulated by a hormone called motilin, but not a lot is known about motilin right now. So it's important to note that the MMC is stimulated by not eating, aka fasting. Now, it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours of no eating, and that includes different types of caloric containing beverages as well, in order to actually stimulate the MMC. And once stimulated, the MMC enters multiple different pathways in order to push that left behind bacteria and food out of your small intestine. And once stimulated, which remember takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours of just being able to be stimulated in the first place, the entire complete cycle of pushing that bacteria out takes around an hour and 45 minutes. That is assuming that you don't eat or drink during this time. Water is fine, but any other type of beverages could be a problem. And assuming that you do have that fasted state, or if you go a little bit longer than that 3 hours and 45 minutes, then your body just repeats that MMC cycle so that it can further clean house. Now, it's really important to keep in mind that this MMC is a natural house cleaning process within your GI tract that is completely inhibited once you eat or even snack. That means the more often that you eat throughout the day, the less your GI tract is getting cleaned out and the more the bacteria is able to feed and build up. And one thing I didn't mention is that when that bacteria is left behind in your small intestine, it gets to feed, right? That's something we talked about. It can steal the nutrients from you. And one byproduct of this fermentation, of it being able to feed off the food that's in your small intestine, is gas. And that's where a lot of the bloating can come into play. That gas gets stuck in your small intestine and leaves that typical sensation of bloating that can be rather painful for a lot of people. So the less you can stimulate your MMC pathway, the more the bacteria left behind food is left in your small intestine and the more bloating that you'll experience. This is why the MMC is stimulated by intermittent fasting. The inherent fasting period of intermittent fasting allows the MMC and your body to actually be able to do its job. In fact, it's so important. It's one of the cornerstones of what I discuss in the complete intermittent fasting bundle, especially with the gut healing protocol that's in the complete intermittent fasting bundle, which I'll have all the details of down in the description below. Now let's get into a little bit further detail of how this actually prevents bloating when you can stimulate that MMC. I've discussed with this video that most of bloating is due to bacterial fermentation of food, and the MMC is used in order to clean house and get rid of bacteria from your small intestine. But when not stimulated, when you're constantly eating and not allowing your MMC to actually do its job, this leaves behind that bacteria as well as the left behind food and any other food that you are also eating during that time, and allows it to go through the process of fermentation. And one of the main byproducts of fermentation is gas. And that gas within your GI tract is what causes that puffing out feeling, causes that feeling of bloating. Plus, the more fermentation that bacteria is able to undergo, the more bacteria that is able to be formed as a result. As I mentioned earlier, we don't want high amounts of bacteria in the small intestine, because then they can steal our food and the nutrients from us, as well as the fermentation that leads to the bloating and the gut inflammation too. Our completely natural house cleaning process of the Migrating Motor Complex, or MMC, aids in preventing these issues of possible nutrient deficiencies and bacterial overgrowth by physically pushing it out when you're not eating. eating. So what can you do to actually stimulate the MMC? There are two main ways to stimulate the MMC, and that's by using a fasting period, such as intermittent fasting, or by spacing out your meals to allow for that 3 hours and 45-minute break minimum. If you choose to use intermittent fasting, you're naturally going to get that fasted period where you are stimulating your MMC every day. This is why so many of the AM peeps who use the complete intermittent fasting bundle guidelines explain that they experience a significant decrease in their bloating within just 1 or 2 days of using the protocols. Now, the alternative method that you can use to not fast but still get that MMC stimulation is to have 3 main meals during the day where you don't snack and you have at least 3 hours and 45 minutes of a gap between those meals. Now, from what I've discussed with some of my clients and AM peeps, this route can be a little bit more difficult because they found that the earlier you eat, the hungrier you get throughout the day. They found that it's a lot easier to have a small fasting period in the first part of the day and then break their fast and eat a little bit later. And this is namely due to the increased fat burning that we have in the morning just from being in a fasted state. It makes it so that it can decrease that appetite. But if it doesn't work for you, you still can use that 3 meal space out. And if you do that, it's really important that you eat properly and eat the types of foods that will keep you really satiated. And that's where you can use the AN nutrient timing that's in the complete intermittent fasting bundle, even without using intermittent fasting itself, so that you can still reap the benefits of the satiating foods so that you don't get hungry between your meals and you can allow for that gap between your meals. If you are using intermittent fasting and you have that smaller eating window, it's not as important to get that 3 hour, 45-minute break between meals because you already are getting a fasted period. If you are using intermittent fasting and you're using keto coffee, then you might want to push your keto coffee to a little bit later during your fasted period so that you can allow for a longer amount of time of a true fast and really stimulate that MMC. Now, even if you are using fasting and you're still experiencing bloating, there are certain types of healthy foods that could be causing issues for you. If this is the case, I highly recommend that you check out this video next. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love the science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out with new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.